Hey everybody, welcome back to Huge Sports. This is at the buzzer, and we're joined as always by Jack Tiernan. Jack, how you doing?
Brian, good. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and Ryan Flynn. Ryan, how are you doing?
Besides my cat harassing the shit out of me, as you just saw, I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm hoping you're both doing well because we have good news. I think, as Celtics fans, I think it's good news. Jaylen Brown has signed a 304 supermax, $304 million supermax contract, richest deal in NBA history. It is for 5 years, and let's talk about it, Jack. Your
All
thoughts?
right. Jaylen Brown deserved this contract, right? He's an all NBA player. Um, he was in line for it. It is the richest contract in NBA history, which everybody always says that and is like, oh my God, it's Jaylen Brown. He can't dribble and he can't go left. And it's like, okay, well, in 3 years, like players who are worse than him are going to be making more than him ultimately, right? Like that's
Yeah.
that's how you have to think about it. At the absolute worst case, you use him next season as a trade piece because you can't trade him this year. You use him the next season as a trade piece and you try to get him out of here for a superstar player like Giannis or Embiid who eventually become disgruntled with their team just punting essentially every year. So that is the absolute worst case with this. And he becomes an asset because he's locked up for 4 more years. He has a trade kicker, which I believe was 15% of his his cost or salary that year. Um, and Brad Stevens also pushed for the no player option in the 5th year, so he can't opt out and try to get a new deal. He's locked in for that 5th year, which is the longest that you're allowed to sign an NBA player for. So that is that's a win, I would say. If nothing else, that is a high value contract, especially if he performs. If he does the exact same that he did this year, including falling asleep in the playoffs, basically, that's fine. Like we'll be okay with that. Um, he is still a massive value in a player uh, that we know can play with Jason Tatum, and will be even more fun to watch play with Kristaps Porzingis, I would say. So I think that's a win. I'm really excited about it, and a lot of Celtics Twitter, you see like a lot of outrage on there, whatever. It's stupid. I think it's fake outrage because they're like they don't understand how contracts work, in my opinion. If I'm being totally honest, I think that's stupid. I think Jaylen Brown is a great player, and we should be excited to have him on our team for the foreseeable future.
All right, Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I would say if you want to be disgruntled with the contracts, it'd be more be just being disgruntled with NBA contracts in general. I think a good way
So
to
true.
look a good way to look at it, as hard as, and I'll shout out my friend Chris Oxum here because he pointed this out, but it is true that like you have to look at when Brown gets a contract like that. Would people be up in arms if Devin Booker got a contract like that? No, you'd kind of expect it, and I would say Jaylen Brown's around that caliber of Devin
Same.
Booker in that ballpark, so it makes sense. That being said, does it? It's great that he's going to be here, but it does make me feel a little nervous just because it's extremely difficult. I'd have to look at the numbers to have two guys at contracts like that. Tatum can opt, right, I believe, to re-sign for the max next year if he'd like to, instead of taking the. So there is that, right? Plus you have Porzingis, Brogdon, Williams aren't necessarily super cheap. So I just don't know how all of that would work. So that kind of just makes me feel like, all right, are they kind of like, we're going to give you this contract that you really want, but maybe we're going to look to trade you. And that also creates kind of a negative culture again. If he kind of knows like,
Yep.
all right, yeah, they're willing to give me as much money, but they're kind of like, haha, we'll dump someone out. We'll dump this shitty contract of yours to someone else, trade it and build around Tatum as we've always planned. So I think that's really looking into it. But
For sure.
for now, just the fact we were able to sign him, it's really good. And honestly, Jaylen Brown is a great player. He's obviously a very smart guy. You kind of knew he was going to be able to, he was going to wheel and deal for the best contract he could possibly get, which he should. He's a very talented player. Um, you know, it is just, it's tough when you like look at like, yeah, again, the most in history, it is tough with contracts. Jokic's contract is a total of like 25 million less. But again, you were kind of talking about how Brown is going to be, guys worse than Brown are going to be making more than him in 3 years. Jokic's contract was what, 2 years ago, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
So now a player worse than him is making more money than him, which is, I mean, that's not controversial to say. Obviously, Jaylen Brown's worse than Jokic.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'll
Yeah.
second that.
I mean, we're all like in on Jaylen Brown, but I think that's fair to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, shout out to Jokic. I saw that his horse won some kind of championship race. He almost looked more excited holding that trophy than he did the NBA trophy.
I think he
Probably
definitely
was.
was.
Probably was.
Yeah. So
But that's more like that's like his hobby, you know. Like I think
Mhm.
basketball. Yeah, it's just like that weird. Like
That's
basketball's
his
duty.
passion. Basketball's his job.
Basketball's like
Yeah.
his duty, you know.
It's 9 to 5.
Yeah, hilarious. But yeah, I mean, Jack. Next, obviously, disappointing end to the season this year. But with the addition of Porzingis and now with Brown being locked up, what can we expect from the Celtics? Should we expect like championship or bust? I just want to get like the vibes after this signing.
I mean, we know we have Jason Tatum locked up for at least this year and next year. Jaylen Brown is now locked in for the next 5, 6, I think technically, actually, and then Porzingis we have for another 3 years. That's 3 years. I wouldn't say championship or bust. I think Brogdon is also under contract for a couple of years, and the Celtics shut down trade talks around him too after that rumor with the Clippers, which is nice. Time Lord is locked up. I mean, I feel pretty good.
And
Al
shooting
is locked up
threes,
and shooting threes, which I don't think actually means
on
anything, but it's
Twitter.
good for the
Yeah.
hype, frankly. Um, I I feel really good about this team, and I feel like we say this every year, but I do feel really good about this team. We still have Derek White locked up for I think the same amount of time as Brogdon. Like I know we lost Smart, and like from a heart and soul perspective, I think we've talked about this in prior when Smart got traded that this is kind of Brad's way of saying, all right, like we're handing the keys to you, Jaylen and Jason. Like this is you guys. Like let's do this. So I wouldn't say championship or bust necessarily. I think this is I feel like it should be that way? Maybe. But I think Brad is doing all of the things that he could possibly do to help this group win now. So maybe not championship or bust, but I think we should have really high expectations.
Ryan, do you agree with that? We should have high expectations going into the next season.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always been high expectations when you have Tatum and Brown,
Yeah, that's a good point.
and the surrounding pieces they have. There's always going to be high expectations, and right, we know like Celtics fans almost expect too much. But I do think kind of this year, right? There were
No,
questions.
never Celtics fans.
There were
No way.
there were questions. So like, Brad really kind of doubled down on Joe, and he said, this is my guy. I'm going to get rid of the 2 players that kind of butt heads with him the most, and probably, Grant wasn't shooting as well this year. Joe never really played him. He became almost non-existent, and then, Marcus.
Yeah, and his 2 highlights are I'm gonna make both of them, and then missing the free throws, and then almost dying straight up on the court when he got his head stepped on. So
Oh God.
not
My
great
knee.
last year for Grant, even though I think we all liked him a lot as a player.
Yeah, and then Marcus too, who obviously it didn't seem like Missoula always vibed with, and he probably out of all the players vibes the least into his like system. I would feel like,
Yeah.
So Brad, this is, and I do think Joe's philosophy is kind of Brad's philosophy to a degree. Brad definitely likes shooting threes, so I think he really went in on it. So I think there's high expectations. Yes, if it goes wrong this year, which you have to remember, that Porzingis injury prone,
Yes.
Williams injury prone. There's been the concerns with. Again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here with Brown in the playoffs and the handles. I think it was probably an injury or something. But
Yeah, we all
he
saw
did great.
it. Can't dribble with his left hand. That was all of Twitter today.
Yeah.
But right, and then we see Tatum.
Oh, sorry, that was all of X today, not Twitter.
Yeah. Right. Sorry. Wrong app name.
So foolish of me.
So there is all of that. So I think, if it goes poorly in the case they like lose early on in the playoffs or something, I think it could mean bad news for Brad, potentially, for sure. I think he could come under fire. That being said, I think there's a pretty good there. You should have pretty high expectations, and if it works out and everyone stays healthy, I think they could easily make a run for the championship, and Brad will look like a genius. Between Porzingis, Tatum, and Brown, as well as the combination in the post of Porzingis and Williams, also again, it did hurt, right? We all hated to see Smart go, but you get Derek White. I think he probably is 15 million less a year or something right now.
Something like that. Much better team friendly deal, yeah.
And is younger. He played better defense last year. He just that year he did, and is more efficient on offense, right? And is someone who's a little less demanding with what he wants to be doing in terms of the team. So a lot of this basically comes down to injuries. And Joe, do you believe in Joe Mazzulla as a coach? I'm not against Joe. I just don't think we've seen enough evidence to suggest he's going to blossom into an amazing coach. I mean, I think people are seeing stuff in him. We saw high points, but we also saw some low points.
Yeah.
So I think we're just going to have to see. But I think if Porzingis stays healthy and the Celtics don't play well, there's just going to be a lot of question marks. So I just don't see how you can't, with those three players, make something happen, especially with all the talent around them.
I do want to give Mazzulla credit too. At the same time, I know, like you said, you were playing devil's advocate, but I think at the same time he also was kind of thrust into this
100%
last year, right?
He was. So
now,
we don't know.
Exactly.
That's all I was saying. I wasn't saying he's a bad coach.
No.
That's the question. We don't really know. I mean, he was.
And we won't. Yeah.
He was really good at the beginning of the year, but he also had a very talented team, and that team was running really well had been running really well under Ime and came together, and then we saw them fall apart in the playoffs. And they've also surrounded Joe with they've made really good coaching choices.
Yes, so true.
Really excellent choices. Yeah. Ultimately, I would consider the offseason, I would say they're a better team than they are going into it. If all goes
I agree.
well.
I totally agree.
Yeah, that's all you can really ask for, right? Get a little bit better each year. But other than that, Jack, where can they find you online?
Best place to find me is on Twitter at Jack_Tiernan. So follow me there, or X me there. I don't know what that phrase is yet. We're gonna roll with it. You can also find me on Instagram, my disc golf account, and that's at Jack Disc Golfs. Unfortunately, I've kind of sucked at tournaments lately, but at the same time, follow me both those places. At least we have MLB and the NBA offseason going on right now.
Yeah, and Ryan, where can they find you?
You can check me out at DunkAF on Instagram for doing some basketball cards and other nerdy shit. That's all I got right now.
Awesome. Yes, so go follow them there. If you want to follow me, see what I'm up to, check out our new, under the umbrella of What You Get Everything's new channel, Slow News Week, where I try to post every week a little bit there, just kind of riffing on the news, making jokes, trying to keep the joke writing sharp, as it were. So really appreciate it if you subscribe to that channel. And other than that, follow me on X, x.com, where it's the fake B Mart, that's BMARR, and then the channel Boogie'd Sports, pretty much everywhere you can find us. So thank you both so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Brad.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Brad.
And we'll see you all in the next one.